The United States, UK and Australia are sending an urgent warning to their citizens of an imminent attack by an Islamic State affiliate against thousands gathered at entry points to Kabul's airport.
Our clear travel advice is now do not travel to Hamid Karzai International Airport. And if you're in the area of the airport, move to a safe location and await further advice.
The urgent message coming as U.S. and coalition partners race to evacuate as many as possible ahead of the August 31st deadline.
I have an aunt and a cousin who are in Afghanistan and their families. And what we're hearing is that the situation is getting worse daily.
Some 4,500 Americans have been airlifted so far. The State Department saying 1,500 are still inside the country.
We're aggressively reaching out to them multiple times a day through multiple channels of communication, phone, email, text messaging, to determine whether they still want to leave and to get the most up-to-date information and instructions to them for how to do so.
Some 77,000 Afghans have been flown out of Kabul in the past 12 days, but thousands who worked alongside U.S. and coalition partners could be left behind to face a perilous future.
The Taliban will let American citizens in, but if they see Afghan interpreters that have their SIV applications, sometimes they're turned away. Sometimes, more grimly, they are returned to their homes where they behead their family and then behead them.
The Catholic news agency reporting that Afghan Christians are being turned away at the airport by U.S. officials, despite having all necessary paperwork to exit. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom sending an urgent message to the Biden administration to broaden the list of those allowed to leave to include Afghan religious minorities who face severe risks.
Many of them are Christians now, but they come from a Muslim background and they are in fear of their life.
Private groups like Charmaine Hedding's Israel-based Shia Fund are mobilizing to help get them and others out. Hedding telling CBN News in Jerusalem that they had 21 Afghan believers at the airport ready to go but were denied exit. She warns these and other Afghans could face danger after the U.S. pulls out next week.
They received a letter from the Taliban before they even closed down the whole of Kabul saying, we know who you are, we know where you are, and they've got them on a list and they're hunting them down.
Some very disturbing information there. Meanwhile, the Nazarene Fund, headed by conservative talk show host Glenn Beck, has reportedly raised more than $28 million to rescue Christians and other Afghan minorities. The reports there is that Beck is currently in the region coordinating those flights. And Gordon and Ashley, as we come on the air, the Pentagon is right now confirming that there was an explosion outside the Hamid Karzai International Airport. State Department spokesperson John Kirby saying there has been some casualty among Afghan citizens. Not clear at this moment whether any U.S. soldiers or U.S. citizens were involved, but clearly this has been something that the White House has been stressing for the last couple of days, that the potential of an attack by this group known as ISIS-K was imminent. There was a very real danger in the last few hours. Those warnings escalated. Both the UK, the US, as well as Australia, telling their citizens stay away from these three entrance points into Kabul, Hamid Karzai International Airport.
Well, if you can't get to the airport, and the warnings are certainly being justified by this explosion,
yeah.
So how in the world can you get out of the country?
Well, I mean, time is ticking away. I mean, the last 12 days, as I've been speaking to my sources inside the country, it's just been fear, chaos, pandemonium, total chaos as they're trying to figure out how to get through these various checkpoints. Christian leaders who are part of the underground church there, it's actually a burgeoning underground movement over the last 20 years. Some have made it, Gordon and Ashley, out of the Hamid Karzai International Airport. But with all the focus there and attention of the world there, other believers, underground church believers, are moving to the eastern part of the country, across close to the border with Pakistan. So there's a huge huge exodus of Afghans and Afghan Christians across the Pakistani border. But then there's also the opportunity to go further north, close to the Tajikistan border. So in all these routes, these 3 exit points, there is a mass exodus of Afghans taking place right now. Now, clearly, obviously, the situation with this explosion is just going to make the situation all the more dire in the last few hours that the United States maintains troops in the country before they have to get out before the August 31st deadline.
Yeah, well, George, what future awaits those Afghan Christians who either decide they want to stay or just can't escape?
Well, I mean, they look at the images today that they're playing out on their screens with this explosion at the airport. They just realize there are various forces in the country, multiple groups, multiple terror groups. In fact, one Afghan former commando said today Afghanistan is the Las Vegas of terrorist groups and extremist groups. But those Christians that I've spoken to who have networks across the country, those who have decided to stay, they are taking a very, very low profile. Some of them, whether they are living in Herat, Mazar-e Sharif, Kandahar, and they're well known in their communities, they're moving to the hills of Afghanistan. And as you know, actually, winter is fast approaching. There's concerns about their well-being, but they're taking a very low profile, trying to stay home, not going out, trying to really limit their movement within the cities.
Well, tell us what we know about the terror groups. ISIS is now claiming credit for that bombing at the airport. What other terror groups are out there, and what do we know about this ISIS group?
Yeah, this particular group, Gordon, is called ISIS-K, K standing for Khorasan. And if you look at the eastern part, if you look at a map of Afghanistan, the eastern part of Afghanistan along the Pakistan border is known as the Khorasan province. And over the years, this group, ISIS-K, has been operating in that region. And what's interesting, Gordon, is that when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, this particular group, ISIS-K, issued a statement saying that the Taliban are in fact apostates and that they are not real Muslims. They call them fake jihadis. So keep that in mind. Here we have a group, the Taliban, that has been notorious. We've known their track record over the last 20 years, even prior to the invasion of Afghanistan. This is a terrible, brutal group that has committed all kinds of atrocities against Afghans as well as other ethnic groups. And here is ISIS-K, who is telling the world that the Taliban are not the real Muslims. And in fact, the ISIS-K, they believe that they don't need to be dealing with political issues, don't have to have cross-country relations. It's all about Islam. It's a very, very strict interpretation of Islam. The UN estimates that there are between 500 to about 1,500 ISIS-K fighters. And clearly today we are seeing the effects of their movement in Kabul right now, and obviously we will see that in the days and weeks ahead.
George, just a philosophical question,
Sure.
if you will. We've spent 20 years now in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What do you think the ongoing legacy is going to be?
Oh my gosh. I think the reality is you have to ask yourself, is the American, what would you say, the experiment with democracy viable in the heart of the Middle East, in the majority of these countries where Islamic law is the prevailing law of the land? Is it possible to bring a Western-style kind of democracy where you do honor and respect the rights of women, where you honor and respect the rights of ethnic minorities, those who don't believe in the ruling, prevailing orthodoxy in terms of the religious orthodoxy? But clearly, after 20 years, it just shows how that experiment is not necessarily possible. This is a generational fight. It'll take a generation or more to change the hearts and minds of these young people who have grown up. The median age in Afghanistan today is 18 years old. What does that mean, Gordon? That means almost the majority of the Afghan population has lived in the last 20 years, and they've experienced freedom, and suddenly it has turned upside down. And so just imagine all of those aspirations, all the changes that we have made to bring some sense of stability to this country has changed in a heartbeat. And now you're seeing a country that, in essence, as the Afghan command commando said, is now the Las Vegas for terrorists and other Islamic extremist groups. So it's very disheartening, it really is. But the church is, the church is there, and the church has been growing over the last 20 years. And next to Iran, they say Afghanistan is the second fastest growing Christian community today in the world. And we need to continue to pray for our brothers and sisters today who have to make some very, very difficult decisions in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, George, thanks for the insight. Thanks for joining us. You can always get the latest news on Afghanistan and more by downloading the CBN News Channel app. Hello, I'm Gordon Robertson. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more encouraging videos like this one. Welcome to the 700 Club Interactive family, and God bless you.